consolidated bank, it requires an act of parliament for it to be in place. They have not done that. So all of these are fundamental breaches. But I will also ask a simple question. Is it the only way that they could have gone, collapsing them for the taxpayer to pay that much?
We'll hear the concerns as Parliament begins probe into the crisis in the banking sector. Meanwhile, government has vowed to ensure that all those found culpable in the collapse of these banks are prosecuted.
The Akufo-Addo administration, working with the new leadership of the regulators in the various parts of the financial services sector, hold accountable persons involved in unethical and sometimes criminal conduct within the sector.
More of that as details of very latest investigative reports by PricewaterhouseCoopers recommending all shareholders and ex-directors of Capital Bank, UT Bank and sovereign banks are banned from financial market for 5 years. Top Story is brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans, your success, our passion. Gatsem, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready? And Nationwide Medical Health Insurance, your healthcare family. Now, government today announced that 7.8 billion cedis of taxpayers' monies were pumped into the banking sector as bailout to save those banks. So far, 7 of the banks, including UT and Capital Bank, Sovereign, Construction, Beige, Royal and Unibank, have all collapsed, raising concerns about the insolvency of these banks and the viability of the banking sector. But the minority is tonight raising serious concerns about government's failure to seek parliamentary approval before doling out the cash. According to them, the provision of the funds as well as the establishment of a new consolidated bank should have received parliamentary approval, but that didn't happen. We'll hear from the minority shortly. But first, here is Minister of Information Designate Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah at government's press briefing today.
The Finance Ministry and the Bank of Ghana have already committed to this, as I've mentioned, so I won't belabor that point. Now, I want to briefly talk about the fiscal implications of this about 7.9 billion that we have had to pump in to hold the fort and to save the situation currently. 2.2, as I mentioned, for the first 2 banks, 5.7 in the second instance. That alone is about 7.9. That has been put in. This is in addition to the other 450 million used to capitalize Consolidated Bank. This obviously is money that was not budgeted to be utilized for this purpose. Indeed, this year, if you look at our total capital expenditure budget, all of us talking about infrastructure and the need to expand infrastructure in this country, our total capital expenditure budget for this year is about 6.3 billion Ghana cedis. So if you compare that to about 7.9 that we've had to spend or we've had to use to plug this, it gives you a fair idea of the size of the challenge that we are trying to tackle. The big deal is the opportunity cost. This is monies that we have to or we have planned to use for other purposes, and we're having to use to hold this fort currently. We therefore, as we get ready for budget 2019, have to come to terms with the full fiscal implications and how to ensure that the agenda is not compromised because of this legacy issue that we've had to deal with. What the Bank of Ghana is also doing to ensure, or what government is doing to ensure that the regulators don't slip. For those who are involved in criminal action, there's a part of them. Receivers have been appointed for these organizations. The job of the receiver is to retrieve, may I say, assets of these organizations that are incumbent, or assets that are not available to the organization, and therefore the receivers are handling that aspect as well.
Information Minister designates Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah there. Well, there have been several calls for prosecution of former directors and shareholders whose actions and inactions led to the collapse of these banks. Mr. Oppong-Nkrumah is promising that those found culpable will not go unpunished.
The objective of government is to have a robust, well-regulated, well-performing financial services sector. If in our bid to achieve that, some persons are found culpable of criminal conduct, as I've mentioned, and as the finance minister has mentioned, the governor has mentioned, those persons will be dealt with. Criminality needs to be dealt with separately from the big objective, which is to ensure that we have a robust, well-performing, well-regulated financial services sector. It is true that it's been about a year since the Bank of Ghana and its advisors completed their primary investigations and made it available to IOCO and some of the other investigative and prosecutorial agencies. I do know that soon they will now take things to the next level. Prosecutorial action against persons found culpable should be commencing soon. What all of us should also bear in mind is that we have history in this country where agencies conduct their investigation, present it to the prosecutorial agencies, and sometimes the courts have shut it down because the prosecutorial agencies did not do their own work and come up with their own dockets. So it's important that that is also done properly so that nobody goes to court to go and falter. So the commitment is clear, the process is being followed, the wheels will grind in due course.
In due course, will it be fast or will it be slow? Well, let's hold it there briefly and invite Raymond Akwa into the studio because it is emerging in a new document that shareholders and ex-directors of the 3 defunct banks, UT, Capital and Sovereign, have been banned from Ghana's financial markets with immediate effect for a period of 5 years. Now, this is according to that document titled Eagle Project. It's an investigative report undertaken by PricewaterhouseCoopers on the collapse of the banks. Raymond, what do we know?
So we do know that this particular document is dated January 29, 2018 and stipulates from January 26, 2018 exactly the actions that ought to be done, the responsible parties and specific timelines till the matter is effectively resolved. The crux of all of this is that a chunk of the things that are supposed to be done not only to UT and Capital Bank but also to Sovereign Bank, because all of this, and you recall that the problems that Capital Bank had, it was the review of that problems with Capital Bank that unveiled the Sovereign Bank problem too. So they are connected to this, and these are the only 3 banks that are dealt with in this particular document. Specifically, it stipulates that between January 29 to February 2, there was the need to specifically identify and agree on low-hanging fruits on asset recovery. What can be taken up immediately to avoid further loss to the sector in this case. And of course, there was also a call to invite MC Management Services, Pronto Services and Breitling Services, because they received, in the case of commercial papers, 130 million for MC Management, Pronto Services 20 million, and also 35 million for Breitling. And all of this money, some way found itself into the activities of Sovereign Bank, as has been explained consistently. Now, the other point you need to know about what's going to happen was also the period of January 29 to February 2. There was also supposed to be a receivers and IOCO invitation to the board of Capital Bank to explain the utility of liquidity support that was given to this Capital Bank. And we have had a long talk about what happened to 620 million. They're supposed to call them, come and justify how you use this amount of money.
Essentially justify the money given to you by the Bank of Ghana to save the bank. Justify how you used it.
Yes.
Basically.
But interestingly, for the case of UT Bank, that call was supposed to be very immediate. It was actually urgent at that time and was required to be done immediately. They received the report from PricewaterhouseCoopers and also from the joint receivers in this case. So that was what was required. Now, the declaration of assets by all of the parties involved, especially shareholders, was also important in the conversation. The understanding we have is that they were supposed to immediately meet on February 8th to see which of the specific assets that were available and also identifying of these assets where they are, specifically when it comes to Oceanic Bottling Company, which is related to Atuasian of Capital Bank, and also Dasman Properties also at Laboni, and also specifically related party properties, and this includes family members in this particular case. So all of these were specifically what was supposed to be done. You made mention of the person to do with shareholders and what they're supposed to do.
Right.
It states categorically that this was an immediate action required, that all shareholders and ex-directors of Capital Bank, the same is said for all shareholders and ex-directors of UT Bank, and again, repeated for all shareholders and ex-directors of Sovereign Bank. They were supposed to have been invited to undertake a written commitment of prohibition from any financial market institution for a period of 5 good years.
We don't know at this point whether or not that has been done.
What we were told by the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, LC Awaji, not long ago is that they are in the throes of doing this. Indeed, they are compiling the names of the people in these banks so that they can then invite them, conclude a conversation with them, then they can issue the name under their fit and proper rules.
Right. Right. And right here in the document, Raymond, I'm seeing a lot of immediately, which basically shows that there were certain actions that have to be taken immediately, besides the ones you gave us, which actually had dates.
Yeah.
We're seeing immediately. Do we know if any of these immediate actions have been taken? And if not, when will they be taken?
We know that there was a call on these shareholders and directors of the various banks, for example, to declare their assets. We know that that has actually been done. We know that there was also a call, for example, on Sovereign Bank to actually assist in the recovery of some of the assets placed with Nordia Capital. That we know also for a fact. What we do know is that there's also a receivers with BOG approval that was also required, which had been done so far. So the clearance from the receivers on BOG approval has been done. The part to do with the identification of assets of these shareholders has been done. Of course, we do know that even for the case of UT Bank and also Capital Bank, the receiver is in court with them on some of their assets and what can be done to retrieve, especially when it comes to some loans in this particular case. So those are the things that we can say for certain has been done.
Right, Raymond, thank you very much for that breakdown and for giving us the update on that information. Mark SCBA is chairman of the Parliament Select Committee on Finance. We will be talking to him. Sir, thank you very much for your time this evening. But I'll come to you briefly. Let's now hear from ranking member on the Finance Committee on Parliament, Kesalato Forsen, who is pushing for sanctions against the Finance Minister in accordance with the Public Financial Management Act. He's been telling Joseph Opoku Gakpo that government acted wrongly.
They decided to go this way of using the taxpayers' money. At that point, let me assure you, they have not asked Parliament to approve the use of 8 billion public fund. So who is breaching the law? The Finance Ministry today is breaching the law. The Finance Ministry has failed to request Parliament to approve 8 billion. They have failed to ask Parliament of Ghana for the permission to spend taxpayers' money of 450 million to consolidate, to capitalize the Consolidated Bank. The Consolidated Bank requires an act of Parliament for it to be in place. They have not done that. So all of these are fundamental breaches. But I will also ask a simple question. The question is that, is it the only way that they could have gone? Collapsing them for the taxpayer to pay that much instead of other available options, bailing them out and getting it to come back to you eventually within 2-3 years. Is that not an option? What about the shareholders, those who are taking money from them, proving? What about those who gave assurances that they will make sure the money will come? Did they know about it? Yes, we've read it in the Borders report that Dr. Mensah Otebo apparently gave assurances to the board as a board chairman that he will make sure that money comes back. Obviously, it shows that he knows about the matter. So why is he not bringing it back since he knows about the matter? See, so we will have to raise concerns. You see, the banks failed because, one, somebody's recklessness, and two, because somebody deliberately decided to hide certain information from the central bank.
The last question, fundamentally, there was some level of breach of the law in not seeking parliamentary approval. Your chairman says it was a domestic bond.
What's domestic bond? So does that mean?
Yes, and you don't need parliamentary approval.
No, chairman is very wrong fundamentally. Even domestic bonds, as part of the parliament budget approvals, is in the budget statement. What we are talking about is not in the budget statement. So what is he talking about? We approved the budget statement of which you have the financing, and the domestic bonds are part of it. So we've approved in principle. So why are we not approving this one? This is not in the financing part of the budgeting. So what are we talking about? So please, it's a breach, and a breach is a breach, and it should be dealt with it. In fact, I'm going to look at the PFM law. There are sanctions that comes with it in the PFM law that will push it against the finance minister.
Kesalato Forsen speaks for the minority on the Finance Committee in Parliament. Let's get a response from for this. Mark SCBA, sir, thank you very much for your time and thank you for waiting.
Yes.
You've had the minority spokesperson on finance. How do you respond?
I think fundamentally what he's saying is that the Minister for Finance breached the Public Financial Management Act by issuing a bond for 8 billion to protect the depositors' fund. I don't think he has pointed us to which section of the Public Financial Management Act that the Finance Minister has breached. I have it right in front of me, and I will refer you to Section 61(1), which says the issuance of government debt securities in the domestic market shall be by way of auction or any other method approved by the minister. So in the domestic market, if the minister decides to issue a bond, he will not come to Parliament. This is done on a weekly basis at the Bank of Ghana through auction. And so I don't know why my good friend, Honorable Ato Forson, is raising concerns in terms of the issuance of the bond. Now, if he says that it is a new expenditure, the minister can come back by way of a supplementary budget sometime in the course of the year to regularize this one. I don't see any failings here on the part of the finance minister.
Well, fortunately for us, we do have a case Ato Forson on the line, so we can get to the specific part of the law he says that the finance minister has breached. Mr. Forson, thank you for your time this evening. Can you point us to the specific area of the law which has been breached?
Thank you. I think I raised 3 major concerns. The first one relates to the cost of the collapse of the bank and the issuance of the bond. We have been informed that they have issued a bond. In fact, the governor informed us that a bond of about 5.76 billion Ghana cedis has been issued. So my question is, on what authority can the governor of the central bank issue a bond on behalf of the public? I think let us be assured that bonds are loans, are debt, and is governed by Article 181 of the Constitution that governs loans. Strongly, I am of the view that Parliament of the Republic of Ghana should be the one to grant the approval relating to the bond issuance.
Well, Mr. Forson, I'll come to you so we talk about the bond because it's obviously a different matter. Now, let's stick to the amount of money put in to save these banks. Did you say that based on that action taken by the Bank of Ghana, there has been any breach of the law?
I think I've made those points clearly, and that is why I'm sorry you didn't allow me to land, because I was raising 3 concerns. The first one is the bond. The second one relates to the establishment of the bank, the new bank, the Consolidated Bank Ghana Limited. On what authority is the central bank or the Ministry of Finance establishing a bank without recourse to the public or to Parliament? I mean, check all traditional banks, those that are owned by the state. There's an act that governs the operation of the bank. The Ghana Commercial Bank had an act. The other one, NIB, and then also the Agricultural Development Bank. So who says that the people of Ghana want to establish a bank? I think it's a question that we have to ask. And then also, they have decided to use taxpayers' money worth 450 million Ghana cedis. For the third point, 450 million Ghana cedis to establish a bank, again, without recourse to Parliament. These are all breaches that I've made reference to, and I think that clearly the Minister of Finance should have asked Parliament to approve this before he goes on this tangent. It is illegal, and I think the right thing should be done.
Mrs. Bayabo, this is the explanation is given. Now, considering even if you're looking at it from a very common sense point of view, if you're investing taxpayers' money or pushing taxpayers' money this much into any venture, doesn't it make sense that the people's representative must approve of it?
Yeah, I think he's raised a number of issues. The first one, we talked about the issuance of domestic debt. I think that's why we are clear in our minds that the minister didn't need parliamentary approval. I think he has a point in terms of the government establishing a new bank. They should be by an act of Parliament. But you have to look at the circumstances under which this occurred. If you had gone to Parliament to pass a law that you were going to set up a bank, then it means you are signaling to the whole world that there are some banks that are going to fail. And then there could be a run on those banks. So I know for sure that the Minister of Finance sought cabinet approval, and he'll come back later to Parliament to regularize it. These were abnormal times, if you like.
But he's also said that there were options. You could have done this over a period of time. He actually mentioned about 2 to 3 years. You work it out over a period of time.
mind you, we did this in the case of the UT and Capital Bank, where GCB Bank assumed these two banks in the purchase and assumption offer. Okay, so we've tried that route before. Here you had 5 banks. Unibank even bigger than the first two we talked about. You had 5 banks, all of these going down in a day. My dear sister, you don't have time in these markets. So what I know the minister did was to confer with cabinet approval from the executive. Mind you, Parliament too on recess. And if Parliament is on recess and the bank is failing, at 9:30, the Banks and Specialized Deposit Taking Institutions Act gives the Bank of Ghana the mandate to collapse these banks without notice. And so you have to put all of these together to appreciate what the bank and the ministry did to safeguard the depositors' funds.
Let me find out from Mr. Atuforsen if he appreciates this point you're making as much as you do. Mr. Atuforsen, he's saying that there wasn't enough time, and you are looking at saving people's investment, hardworking Ghanaians' investment in these banks. There wasn't enough time. The minister sought cabinet approval. Will come back to Parliament. Does that suffice for you?
Madam, I disagree. You see, we are in a democracy. Laws must be made to work. It is not for nothing that the Constitution says that prior approval of Parliament. It is not for nothing that before the state owns something, Parliament will have to approve it. Yes, I agree that at times these are ordinary, not an ordinary time, and then obviously the circumstances are different. But the Minister of Finance knows for sure that this was certainly going to happen. You could have packaged it in a way and let it be as if the state is establishing another bank. I mean, you can do it there are ways to do it. So I strongly disagree with my colleague, the Honorable Mark SCBA, the chairman of the Finance Committee, that yes, I agree that there are difficult times, but it could have been done properly.
It could have been done better.
The laws must be made to work. And correctly, let me say that the bond couldn't have been issued without parliamentary approval. You see, it's something that has to be done and it should be done. I heard him when he made a point that it is domestic bond and it should have been part of the budget. It is part of the budget. Let me remind my colleague that the original budget that all of us, me and him, we worked to get it approved in Parliament excludes this extraordinary expenditure. It excludes that. And so it is not the financing as approved by Parliament.
Right, Mr. Forsen,
the finance minister came before Parliament to get the media review approved. There was no adjustment on that. So I was of the opinion that you should have used the media review. How long ago did we get the media review approved?
Very well, Mr. Forsen. I'd like for us to keep our focus so that we deal with the bank issues and get it over and done with. I'd like to find out from you, from what we're seeing, from the documents we're seeing and the information available to us, these things started way back when you were Deputy Finance Minister. Did you not see this coming?
Well, what started way back?
The financial issues of these banks.
You see, let's explain. The previous administration commissioned the asset quality review test. The outcome of the report, of the test, I mean, we received it around October, November 2016. The elections were held in December 7th. So how many months after the report came? And how do you expect the previous administration to have worked on that report after a month in office? It's virtually impossible. Virtually impossible. So we started the asset quality review test to look at the health of the entire banking sector. We started it just to find out what is really wrong with the banking sector.
So what did you find? What did you find?
Pretty late into the administration.
What did you find at the time? At the time you tried to probe, what did you find?
I can't understand. I can't hear you right.
What did you find relating to the financial issues of these banks at the time?
You see, as I said, the asset quality review test was supposed to look at the issues relating to the quality of their assets, the deposit, as to whether some of them might be classified as bad debt or not. So we found out that the health of the banking sector is something that certainly we'll have to work on. And it came around October, November. We left office in January. How could you have worked on it? So the idea that we saw it and we left it is a fallacy.
It's a fallacy. Let me cross over to Mr. SCBA and find out from him. Sir, you were at the time at the Bank of Ghana. You were a senior economist at the Bank of Ghana. Did you also not see this coming?
Hey, my sister, I left the Bank of Ghana in 2011. Okay? I've been empty since January 6, 2013. So I suggested I haven't worked at the Bank of Ghana previously. I'll be following events there on a daily basis. I have long left. So please.
So you have absolutely no idea that these banks were having issues that will eventually lead to a use of the taxpayers' money.
We don't, on a day-to-day basis, we don't inquire of their dealings. As a matter of fact, our oversight responsibilities happen after the fact. In Parliament, what we do, oversighting, happens after the fact. That's what we do here in Parliament. So it is now time for us to.
Now, your committee has today opened a full probe into the circumstances leading to the collapse of these banks. We're told that you'll be holding in-camera sittings on this 5th, 6th and 7th September. What are the terms of reference? Exactly what are you looking to find?
I think there's a lot of information flying about. The people's representatives have to get first-hand information. More so, when the Finance Committee is the committee charged to oversee the economy generally. And so we want to bring the central bank in, the Minister of Finance, as my colleague has raised issues, the Securities and Exchange Commission, this new consolidated bank, this new animal, the receivers. We want to bring them in and inquire of them what has happened, the way forward, because I don't think we have come to the end of these troubles in the banking sector. So beginning 5th September, we seek information. We have written to the Bank of Ghana for them to supply us with documentation information relating to the collapse. We will peruse the documents and do our job as is required of us.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you very much for your time this evening here on the show. Mr. Tofosin, what are your own expectations of this parliamentary probe?
I think it's a very necessary thing that we have to do. In the end, what we seek to do is to uncover the fact. We want to know whether it's someone's negligence that caused the collapse of the banks, or it is due to other factors other than negligence. We want to establish that. We want to have lessons learned from it. It's a major case study. I mean, this is the very first time in our history that we've seen 7 banks collapsing. I think we have to draw some lessons from it and going to make sure that it will not happen again. I think that is exactly what we want to know. We decided to go in camera because of the sensitivities that surrounds the banking sector and its impact on the entire economy. We believe that is the way to go. But in the end, we have assured the public that we are going to do a bipartisan probe, something devoid of partisanship, and clearly we bring out to work professionally and make sure the public gets exactly what they're expecting to get.
And whilst we're at it, I'm sure that we'll be looking out for the thousands of workers or hundreds of workers who are losing their jobs. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Dr. Mark SCBA is the chairman of the Parliament Select Committee on Finance. Kesalato Forsin speaks for the minority on the Finance Committee. Top Story is brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Gassam, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready? And Nationwide Medical Health Insurance, your healthcare family. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. MFA Apau has more.
And in the next 60 minutes here on Newsnight, NPP Vigilante Group Kandahar Boys demands release of their colleagues after police in the Northern region arrest 4 people in connection with raid on Tamale Teaching Hospital CEO's office.
We call on the regional police commander to release our members whom we evidentially believe are totally innocent to this